Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into my updated 2024 US presidential prediction here. I'm going to be doing it once a week here leading up until the election. I did it on October 3rd. Now it is the 10th. I think it's probably going to be every Thursday is my official updated prediction, and I'm doing it a little bit differently. I'm just going to be talking about, this is not the swing states. So like Texas, you see, New York, they're not swing states. I'm just going to be outlining some states, and then we're going to be going over my new prediction. Obviously, all the states that I have here done, I think we can pretty much all agree on those. You could argue Colorado, but I think Colorado is going to go to Harris pretty comfortably there. New Mexico's another one. Maybe it's a 5 or 6 point advantage for Harris, but I think she's going to take it easily. Obviously, some states that I want to talk about here before we get into the actual swing states and the polls and what's been happening there. Remember, my last prediction had Trump at 312 electoral votes, which is him taking all 7 swing states. At this point, Minnesota and Virginia are not swing states. That would be with Harris taking Virginia and Minnesota, Trump being at 312. But New York obviously will be going to Harris. But I do want to talk about New York because I do think Trump is going to significantly, and I think everyone agrees, improve his overall margin in New York. He lost it by 23.5 points in 2020. I did release an update on X on where I think where it's going to be in 2024. I've got Harris right now, 12.5 point victory in New York. By the way, with Trump being at Madison Square Garden and the other rally that he did a few weeks ago, it might be under that. Trump might be able to get that margin around 11, which is going to help him significantly with the popular vote. It's going to help with the House races. So New York obviously will be liberal, but I did want to talk about the margin coming down, basically being cut in half from 23 to maybe 11 or 12. The recent polls, I mean, we saw polls with Biden that had Biden only up by 9, and even the recent polls we've seen out of New York have had Harris up by around 12 points, maybe 13. And those are polls that normally traditionally overestimate Democrats in New York. So you may even talk about lower, and that's before the epic, historic Madison Square Garden rally that Trump's going to be having later this month. So it is pretty remarkable there. New Hampshire, I am also going to give to Harris, possibly by around 5 or 6 points. I mean, she's been up. There's very limited polling out of New Hampshire, and there was some good voter registration data that got released. Republicans are outnumbering Democrats in New Hampshire, but it really doesn't matter a lot because there are so many independent people that normally always lean to the left. And I've heard that there are a lot of independents that in New Hampshire, unfortunately, just don't like Trump. So I think she's going to take New Hampshire as well. You're taking a look at Maine at large. I think that's another state that at this point, Harris probably takes by like 5 or 6. Somewhere around there. That was a state that was very close in 2020, the at-large, the 2 electoral votes, and then it was very close in 2016, and then 2020, Biden won it by like 6 or 7. The second district in Maine, that's a district that I think Trump is going to take. It's going to be pretty close, but probably by about 5 or 6 points, he should take that. Taking a look at the district in Nebraska, the second district, I think Harris will take that. It might be closer than we expect, but unfortunately, that district is trending liberal. And there's multiple races within that district that are trending liberal. So I think she'll take that. And the recent polling has said maybe a 5 or 6 point victory for the second district of Nebraska. That's why Republicans were trying to make it winner take all. But if you can exchange the second district in Nebraska, you take the second district in Maine. It's whatever. You're basically exchanging one for the other. It's not a big deal. Also taking a look at Minnesota, I think Harris wins Minnesota at this point. You could argue Minnesota and Virginia. I'm going to give Harris Virginia and Minnesota. Probably, I mean, Virginia by about 3.5 to 4. You could argue maybe even 5. Minnesota similar. Which one is it going to be closer? It's hard to say. Traditionally, you would say, well, based on history, recent history, it would probably be Minnesota because of how Trump performed in 2016 there. But I don't know. I think Virginia might be slightly closer than Minnesota. I still have to go Harris on both of them. I know there's amazing momentum right now for Trump. If we get a few more polls out of Virginia that are like a 1 or a 2 point lead for Harris, or we get internal numbers, I might flip Virginia. I seriously might, but based on the information, I just can't do it. So those 2 states, they're not really known as, I mean, I guess Real Clear Politics does have Minnesota as a swing state, and I can talk about that. Obviously, Texas is not a swing state. I think Trump is going to take Texas. We've gotten some pretty good polls recently. You know, there was a Trump plus 10 poll that came out about a month ago, but they waited to release it. And then more recently, we've seen Trump plus 6, plus 7. That's a state that I do want to outline and I do want to talk about because it is important for Trump, for him to try and keep the margins that he's had. You can see the recent, I mean, these are good polls for Trump. I feel like in 2020, the polls were closer, like they normally underestimate Trump, and then Trump won the state by like 6. What was the actual margin 5.8. Yeah, listen, it's very, very good. If Trump can win this state by like 6.5, because of the migration we've seen with Texas, I mean, they're gaining electoral votes. They're getting liberals from California, and you're still maintaining a margin of 5-6 points. The problem would be if this state continues, because we've seen really since like 2008, 2012, it's shifting and it's getting closer, 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 and libs are making up 3 points each cycle. So if that stops and you're able to maybe even expand from 5.8, which is what Trump won it by in 2020, to like 6.5, now you're talking about Texas not being a real option for liberals in 2028. Liberals want to bring it down to like a 3.4 point victory for Trump and say, oh, it's going to be purple in 2028 and we can flip it with more migration. But if you're talking about a 6 or 7 point victory, it's out of reach in 2028. It's not going to happen. They're trying to get Texas and just really destroy Republicans' electoral math, but it's not going to happen in 2028. You're not going to see this state with the population that it has shift 7 points in one election cycle. So if Trump can win it by 7, Republicans will basically be a lock to win it in 2028 as well. You're trying to hold off that narrative that they can flip Texas in 2028. Texas is important, obviously, as well for just the popular vote in general, to get like us, maybe even gain more votes in Texas from 2020, which again, with what's happened to Texas, with all the migration shifts, a lot of liberals moving in, with Austin, with San Antonio, with all of it, it's very impressive if you are Donald Trump when it comes to Texas. Obviously, Ohio, I would say, very easily goes to Trump. There's been some polls that, I've disputed. I'm from Ohio. I know Ohio politics. I think Trump wins Ohio by 9.5 points. I think he probably wins Florida by even more than Ohio. If you look at the 2022 midterms in Ohio versus the 2022 midterms in Florida, it was like night and day. J.D. Vance really didn't win all that impressive. You could argue people really didn't know him at that time, but it was like a 5.5 point victory. In Florida, obviously, DeSantis and Rubio won by 20 and 16. I think Florida at this point is probably more conservative than Ohio, believe it or not. And I think Trump wins Florida by about 11.5 points, and he wins Ohio by 9.5. Trump won Ohio by 8.1 points in both 2016 and 2020. It was the exact same margin, 8.1. I think it's shifted slightly more right, especially with the national environment being more right-wing. Trump's going to perform better than he did against Hillary and Biden in terms of the popular vote. I think everyone can agree it's going to be within 2 points or right around there. And I think in Ohio, Trump's going to also gain about 1.5 points, go from that 8.1 margin win to a 9.5 or 9.6, somewhere in there. And Florida's going to be about 11.5 when it comes to that. So that is basically all the swing states, if you want to say it. You could also take a look at polls in Virginia, Minnesota. There's really none that I've seen updated. Maybe they'll come in today, tomorrow, but it's the same stuff. It's like the average is Harris +5, +6 in both of those states when it comes to that. But let's get to all the swing states. So we will start with Nevada. I am still giving Trump Nevada very narrowly. I think if you ask me right now what is going to be the closest state in the election, I think it's probably Nevada. And I have Trump winning Nevada by like 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, somewhere within there. You take a look at Nevada, and you do have Harris +1. And it really is interesting because you take a look at this date in 2020, Biden was sitting +6. So that's one of the narratives that we've seen is, oh, Republicans always perform worse in Nevada relative to the polls. Well, no, Biden was sitting +6 on October 10th of 2020. What did he end up? What was the margin in this? 2.4. So Trump outperformed those polls by over 3 points. And now Harris is sitting +1. And that one Bloomberg poll got taken out of the aggregate. So it got a little bit better. But there is that Atlas Intel poll with Harris +3. Atlas Intel is respected. So listen, this is the one state where if you're Trump, if you lose this state, you're fine, because this has the lowest amount of electoral votes out of the Big Seven. But I still think Trump can win this state. Either way, I do think it should be very, very close. And I think in the end, Trump will probably win it just barely. Moving on to Arizona, I think Trump's going to win Arizona by around 3 to 3.5 points at this point. I think Arizona is the one state, kind of the narrative that we've had is they've kind of given up Arizona, the liberals have, and it seems like it is going to be a Trump flip at this point by around 3 points. Where is this? See, the thing is, I don't have these. Let me just bring these together. So Arizona, Trump sitting +0.9, a little bit closer margin than I expect. Yeah, see how it was about a 2 point lead. Now it's down to a 1 point lead. And it's not necessarily because, I mean, what is this pollster? This is a TV network pollster that has Harris +2. These are very close polls, but to me, I feel like you've got Cook Political. They've been terrible. I feel like at this point, Trump will win the state. You take a look at where Biden was +2.7. That's an improvement of 3 points for Trump over 3 points versus 2020. And there's some really good news coming out of Arizona. It just feels like at this point, Trump's going to take the state based off of what everyone is saying, all of the intel coming out of there. Georgia is another one I think Trump takes, maybe by a similar margin as Arizona. There's really no reason for me to change my prediction on any of these states. It's Georgia, you take a look at it, Trump plus 0.8, very, very close polling. There's no doubt about it. You've got some ties. You've got Trump being up in most of these polls. You've still got that Fox News poll in the aggregate sitting as Harris plus 3. I'm sure Fox probably within the next, they're going to have to update their poll here pretty soon, you would think. And possibly you'll see you've got that Quinnipiac plus 5 there in Georgia, which really helps Trump. But I do think Trump will take Georgia as well. Georgia is very close. It is. But there's been some also real good internal numbers out of Georgia as well when it comes to Trump. Taking a look at North Carolina, that's another state I think Trump wins, possibly by a closer margin than Georgia. It might only be a point. It might be 1.5. Obviously, the hurricane affecting there. You can see the recent polls all have Trump up. The one Atlas Intel plus 3 is really helping her in the aggregate. It's got Trump plus 0.6. Very, very close polling. Trump is outperforming his 2020 rate by about 2.5 points. Remember, he won in 2020. He won in 2016. And both 2020 and 2016 at this time, the Democrat was up. Now Trump is up. So we would expect Trump to continue that and win North Carolina. The environment is a lot better for Trump, and he won it in both 2020 and 2016. So I would expect him to win that state as well. Moving on to Pennsylvania. Obviously, Pennsylvania is going to be very close. It's another state that I think Trump is going to win barely. There's been a huge effort in Pennsylvania. It is very close. This is pretty crazy, though. I mean, listen, maybe the polls are way better, but look at this. Hillary Clinton was up by 9.5 points in mid-October. Biden was up by 7. So Trump outperformed these numbers by 10 points in 2016 and he still lost Pennsylvania barely in 2020, but he still outperformed this by about 6 points. It's pretty crazy. And you compare that to where the polls are, the shift is just remarkable. And you don't need anywhere close to that error. If you get an error of 2 points, Trump wins the state by 2.5. You'll take that 100% of the time. And also, if he wins Pennsylvania by 2.5, he's probably not going to lose Michigan or Wisconsin, especially with the trends we've seen in both Michigan and Wisconsin. And so both Michigan and Wisconsin, I am going to be giving to Trump very, very slightly, but it's more of the same when it comes to these states. Like Michigan, you did see Trump recently go ahead in the average for the first time since really the withdrawal. Like right when Kamala took over, she took a big lead. That was the one Rust Belt state where she was clearly leading by 2.5 points in pretty much all the polls. I mean, you can even look at the history of this. Harris was up, for most of these, pretty much like 17 out of the 20 polls there, and then Trump has surged up, and now you're seeing Trump up pretty significantly. We'll have to see what Bloomberg says. They had their last poll had Harris plus 3, but it was that big Quinnipiac plus 4 poll that really, I feel like, set the panic alarm off for Kamala and a lot of her supporters. That's a crazy poll from Quinnipiac. What was Quinnipiac's last poll? Harris plus 5. Pretty remarkable. It's a 9-point swing from Quinnipiac, and that's what really led to the Trump going up by 0.7. Because if Quinnipiac releases a new poll, you've even got Emerson coming out saying it's a tie, which you'll take if you're Trump based on where Emerson previously was with Harris plus 2. So there's a shift in all these polls going to the right. We'll have to see what Cook Political comes out. They're due for another poll. Bloomberg is probably going to have another poll. Both of those, I mean, they're going to get wiped off of the aggregate. Imagine both of those shift to the right. Now you're going to get an aggregate average lead of Trump by about 1.5 to 2 points. If Cook Political and Bloomberg go to the right, which we would expect based on this, you'd highly doubt they would spit out another Harris plus 3. Look at the recent trends. They might spit out a Harris plus 1, but who cares? Michigan and Wisconsin are trending. I think Trump's going to surprise people in Wisconsin. I really do. And possibly win Wisconsin by more in terms of margin than even Pennsylvania by about 2 points. But we'll have to see. Either way, I would say still I have Trump at 3-12. I really don't have a reason to change it. The only thing I think you could argue is probably Nevada. You could also possibly argue Georgia, believe it or not, because the polling is just so close in Georgia. Libs will try and say, well, Nevada, Georgia, and then they'll try and take the Rust Belt. That's what I'm guessing their plan is. I mean, you've also got North Carolina there as well that they're going for, I know. But their path really revolves around, possibly Georgia, North Carolina, and then some concoction of the Rust Belt. I do think, you know what? I've seen some polls with Jill Stein. Guys, I think Jill Stein, believe it or not, takes Illinois and just destroys I'm just kidding, but imagine Jill Stein. That's a nice green color, though. Jill Stein takes Illinois. Now, I think for Harris, her path would be you would want you need one of these states. You want Nevada because it's winnable. You'll take the 6 electoral votes if you're Harris. So you want Nevada. You want to get at least one of these states, whether it's Georgia or North Carolina. If you can split that, and then you need the Rust Belt. I'm just wondering if I do. Let's just give her that. Wow, Trump still wins with that. Holy crap! But that's unlikely because you would not expect Pennsylvania to be the one. It would be more so like this. It would be like that. Obviously, the colors are not right, but you even in an event like this where she does take Michigan, you've still got Trump winning the election with her taking Michigan, Georgia, Nevada. Trump still wins. Trump still wins with her taking Michigan, Georgia, Nevada. That's why if you're Trump, you have to at least split North Carolina, Georgia. You give yourself such a big room for error there. That's why Nevada also really isn't extremely important, just because I wonder if I did that and then gave her that. No, Trump still wins. Wow. So you take Wisconsin, Michigan, and Georgia, but if Trump's able to get Nevada and he wins, it's very interesting scenarios. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. I do have Trump. My prediction right now is 312. Still 312 electoral votes. You could be looking at Nevada leaning a little bit to Harris. I think it's going to be very, very close, but I've got it like a half point to Trump. But that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.